If you're a parent, you've probably noticed the world is moving pretty fast, and its ideas are moving right along with it. And if you're like me, you might not be too happy about some of those ideas, especially when you realize they're being forced on our kids at an extremely young age. So, what can we do about that? That's an important question given that we as parents are ultimately responsible for raising our children. Talking to our little ones is a great place to start, and reading to them is a great way to promote discussion. That brings me to a vital resource I want you to be aware of. It's a picture book for readers aged 4 through 9, which introduces the topic of compelled speech to children. Ollie Adamson's Strawberries Are Red, a story about compelled speech, gently introduces this topic and is sure to encourage great discussion between you and your little one. Freedom of speech is essential, and our children should be made aware of this. This book is available on Amazon, and I encourage you to order your copy today. We owe it to our kids. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Clean Libertarian Podcast. Hope that wherever you're at, you're having a great weekend so far. Maybe you're checking this out on the drive Monday morning. Hope you have a kick-ass work week. I know everything's going to be just all right. You know, life's going pretty good right now, man. My family's healthy and happy. I'm healthy and happy. I'm a little bit overly healthy. I should probably revisit the whole diet thing at some point in the future. But you know what? By God, we'll get there when we're supposed to. For the time being, I'm living large, and I hope you are too. I've talked about in the past having, semi-recently made the transition into working in the mental health and substance abuse industry. Some of the frustrations that I've had with it. And I ran across Liberty Counselor. She is on Twitter. And I found out that, she too works out in the field out in California. And I really wanted to bring somebody on who could kind of bounce some of that stuff around with me. We could have that discussion. And what does it look like to be a libertarian who works in this field? And that's exactly what we did. This was a great conversation. We brushed on a lot of good points. And on top of that, we got to hear her story of recovery. So, there's the bonus. But I hope you guys enjoy it. Without any further ado, here is Liberty Counselor. All right. What's up, Liberty Counselor?
What's up, Clean Libertarian?
Not much. Thanks for hanging out with me on a Saturday morning. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one because you said that, you too work in the rehabilitation field, having liberty leanings. I'm very curious to hear about that. But most importantly, I would like to hear your story about like how, you kind of found your way into the recovery world of sorts and especially what brought you into working in the rehabilitation field.
Okay, cool. Well, let's see. Without sounding like a drunkalog, which I haven't given in a long time because I don't really go to meetings anymore. But back in it's all part of my testimony. I'm more likely to now tell the story like at church than at a 12-step meeting. But
Right.
So I graduated in the 80s and was a pothead, and then got into meth in the mid 80s and was an addict off and on for a long time, almost instantly, because who doesn't want to be skinny and have more energy, right?
Right.
Except back then it was called crank.
Yeah, that was the real deal back then.
Yes, and it's not called that anymore because I did it all, and now it's gone. So they had to come up with something else. So that was my drug of choice. And pretty much tried everything, but that was my favorite. And it was the 80s, so everybody did coke as well. And then I got into injecting at some point, which is probably why I still have my teeth. I never got into smoking that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was pretty hardcore addicted for a while. Got sober for a while when I had my first kid in 1986, and then was back on again in a couple months and had a good addiction going there until the early 90s. And then about 1995, I was into, the typical stuff that people use drugs are into, check fraud and hanging out with shady people and stealing. And if we had had the computer stuff that we have now, I probably would have been into like some sort of cyber theft or something. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But we didn't. So I was into check fraud, and that was ultimately what got me into trouble. The only time I ever got in trouble for drugs was one time when I was outside a bar in a car with another girl, and we were doing lines of coke, and then a cop came up to the window, knocked on the window. A little side note, just because we're going libertarian later. So I got arrested that night, and he actually planted drugs in the back of his car after he took me out of the car. And to this day, when clients tell me that cops planted something on them, I believe them because of my own experience.
Yeah.
Right? Because I had done all the drugs that I had. I didn't have any more. And he took me out of the back of the police car, went into his trunk, got something, put it in the back of the car, and then said, "What's this?"
Wow.
Yeah. And it was only a little bit, but it was enough to keep me in jail for the night, But that was actually my first experience at recovery. And then, so fast forward to the 90s, the check stuff got me in trouble a couple of times, probably like 2 or 3 times in 1 year. And so by the time I actually got to the third time I got arrested, I was not going anywhere. I was staying in jail for a while. So it was basically check stuff, fake IDs, possession, all sorts of different things that they put on you in a non-free society. I was not libertarian back then. I was a Democrat, by the way, as a lot of people are when they're in their 20s, right?
Yep.
And then I was in jail for about 3 months. I was looking at probably doing like 4 years in prison. And that was where I found Jesus, was in jail, like a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I sort of grew up in the church, but I wasn't really serious about it until I got born again when I was in jail. And that's a big part of my story, because I maintain that relationship with God to this day, whereas I don't really do 12-step stuff anymore. So that was a turning point in my life. And I can't say it was probably exactly where I needed to be, and exactly what I had to have happen at that point in my life was to be just taken away from all the chaos and all the madness and all the people that I was hanging around with, and just have a timeout for 3 months. So incarceration does serve a purpose sometimes. And I'm not saying that, we'll talk about the libertarian perspective later, but for me, that was actually a blessing in disguise, because it made me get my shit together. I only wish that people today that I work with would have a wake-up call like that, where they actually change. The system has changed a lot, and it really sort of enables people to just keep going and going and going until they're dead, to a certain extent. Part of that is because of all the free handouts, but we'll get back to that later.
Yeah.
So anyway, I maintained my sobriety from methamphetamine, never touched it again, got very involved into 12 steps. I was on house arrest for about a year, and I was on probation for 4 years. And I had 1 child at that point. And I did not want to go back to jail. I was just done with jail. Jail's terrible. I mean, it's not like the movies, but you're away from your family, and the food sucks, and you're inside, and I didn't like it, and I didn't want to go back. So I did everything that I had to do, jumped through all the probation hoops, went to 12-step meetings, stayed sober. And there I met my husband, my first husband, in a 12-step meeting, who's the dad of my next 2 kids that I had. At about a year sober, when I was chairing a meeting, he wandered in. So I did the 13th step, which is the best one. Yeah. And then we actually ended up getting married and having 2 kids. And he is an alcoholic. I never knew him as an alcoholic. I only knew him in recovery. He's still in recovery to this day, still goes to meetings. So in my house, we never had any alcohol. Alcohol was not my thing. I didn't miss it. We didn't have it lying around. I just didn't drink anything for 13 years. So that's part of the story too. And about when my youngest son, I was a stay-at-home mom for 6 years, best job ever. And then when my youngest son was about 4 or 5, I started thinking that I wanted to do something with my life besides be a mom. Not that it's not the best profession ever, and very, very important, but I wanted to go back to work and have a career. So I decided I was either going to become a pastor or a drug counselor. And I was influenced by another guy at church who actually ended up being my boss later, who was into the recovery thing and worked as I think he was a clinical soup at the time. So my pastor told me to talk to him. I talked to him. We had a conversation. He said, yeah, it's a good field, but don't get into it if you expect that you're going to be rolling in dough, because it doesn't pay shit.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is true. But I just wanted to, I was on my pink cloud. I was about probably 5 or 6 years sober, and I just wanted to help people. Yeah, I just wanted to help other addicts, which I think is why a lot of counselors get into the field. It's certainly not the money, and it's not the status, right? It's not.
Nope.
It's not because even if you get the highest paying job there, you can even go anywhere. It's just because we want to help people. And that was why I got into it. So I still have a lot of 12-step friends. That was a part of my life for a long time. Meetings. It was one of the only things that I could do when I was on house arrest, was go to meetings and go to church. So I did. I went to lots of meetings. But anyway, fast forward, I went to my local community college. I already had some college. I had a degree in graphic design from when I was younger. I was about, how old was I at the time? Probably like 36 or so, 36, 37. Took the classes, got my AS degree in alcohol and drug studies, and started working in the field as an intern when my youngest child, who's now 21, when he started kindergarten. I started interning part-time. So fast forward, I have been in the field since then, since about 2005. Worked lots and lots of places. Never went back to my drug of choice. I got divorced in 2010 and met my current husband shortly after that. And at that point, I said, why can't I have an adult beverage? I'd been 13 years without ever touching alcohol or anything else. And at that point, I would start drinking on occasion. And that's kind of where I'm at today. I don't do meetings. I work in the field. I hear enough on a daily basis to know that I never want to go back to that crap again. Nothing has changed since the 90s. Nothing. It's the same shit, different day, decades later. So I'm pretty confident that drugs are not for me. And then to sum it up, I also briefly tried marijuana when I got cancer in 2019. I had heard that it was good for that. And so I tried it and I did not like it. I really tried to like it. I tried. But it gave me crippling anxiety and I could not handle it. Yeah. So once in a while I'll make like a tea or something like that. But I really enjoy CBD. Good stuff. And sorry, I'm saying a lot. Take a shot every time Martha says no. No, don't do that. Let's see. And let's see. So now I've been in the field for a long time. I currently work for one of the biggest mental health facilities in the Bay Area. And a couple of years ago, they opened a substance use department. And I came on pretty early, about a year after they'd opened, because I had a friend that I worked with before that worked there. I've worked at a lot of places, and I would say probably 80% of the places that I've worked have closed, either because of mismanagement or funding getting cut off or something like that. I'm kind of disillusioned with the business at this point, the business aspect of it, though I do really enjoy talking to people and doing the work. But as far as my own personal story, where I'm at right now, I'm just a normal person. I'm married to a normie. I understand the 12 steps. I understand recovery. I understand what it's like to be addicted. I've been there. And I strongly recommend 12 steps and total abstinence to all my clients in early recovery. But I don't have your typical person in recovery lifestyle as far as meetings and stuff like that. Sometimes I feel a little bit guilty about that, but I do recommend it to people in recovery because it's really super important to be able to, you know, work through your issues, rewire your brain, etc. But
For sure.
so currently I've been at my current job for a little over 2 years, and it's a pretty stable place. I don't think it's going to close anytime soon, but it has the typical problems of all nonprofits, all profitable nonprofits that are focused on recovery. The difference is that this place is mostly mental health place, and all of our clients, almost all of our clients, are co-occurring dual diagnosis clients.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's about it. So here I am 55, really liking certain aspects of the work, but also kind of wanting to veer off out of the system, away from nonprofits, and do my own coaching thing. So I recently went to school for that, to become a recovery coach, life coach, relationship coach, you know, just personal coach. And at one of these days, I'm going to wash my hands of this whole nonprofit thing and just start my own business. I'm currently in the process of doing that. I have a couple of clients, but I'm not quite in the position to quit my day job yet because I haven't applied myself to my new business, because it's scary.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's scary not having insurance and, you know, starting your own thing. But that's where I'm going with it. I really want to work with people who want to be there and want to be in recovery, instead of people that are sent to me and forced to be in recovery. Something about paying for your recovery, I think, makes it worth a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Without a doubt, it does. I mean, because you're voluntarily stepping up to the plate at that point, right? You're investing in yourself.
Yes, it's an investment. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like what I do, I'm an IPS employment specialist. I don't know if y'all have IPS out where you are or not, but I work, it's part of the integrated mental health model, you know, big tent type thing. And my department, we help people, you know, get back into the workforce and find employment.
Okay.
The bulk of our clients are, you know, not able to pay for their own services. So, I mean, we are the front lines of the problem, you know, and dealing with that. And one of the things I was excited to talk to you about is kind of what you've seen in terms of how these grants come about and all the stipulations that the state puts on them.
Well, I don't know a lot about grant writing, but I know that it's something that people in my business have stressed about. I've heard them saying, "Oh, I got to find someone to write a grant. I'm working on this grant. I'm writing a grant." And I assume what it is you're asking for money from the government, right?
Yeah,
for
essentially.
your business. So I don't know. How would you? What was the question again? As far as, I don't know much about grant writing. So state-wise, I'm in California.
Yeah.
I am in the heart of the liberal hell in the Bay Area. And there's a lot of funding out here in California for stuff. Lots of, you know, there's Medi-Cal, there's lots of different programs. If you're undocumented, if you have nothing, you can still get treatment. So somebody somewhere is getting some grants. I know that.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
we are a nonprofit, but I know for a fact that our CEO and our yeah, our upper people make a lot of money, so they're getting a profit out of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure, like, what the higher ups where I work at make at all, but I do know that specifically when it comes to things like Matt, you know, um, the grants that we get from the state have a stipulation on how many people we need to be prescribing Suboxone.
Oh,
Um,
medication assistant treatment. Yeah.
yeah, that
So
stuff.
we don't do that, but I'm very familiar with the couple of agencies that we have around here. And as far as the requirements and the loopholes and the paperwork that you have to jump through, I would say that that is the number one thing that has completely ruined this field for me,
Hmm.
is the
Yep.
paperwork and the requirements. Every time they come out with a new form, a new computer program, some new way to document, they don't take anything away. They just keep adding, adding, adding. And
Yes.
I'm doing the same fucking form like 3 times, in different formats. And it's really annoying. And then we also have a paper file. So I don't know where the term paperless, by the way, as I start to get going, I'm probably going to swear more because I get mad, but
Fucking
um,
go for it. Get on
okay,
down
cool.
through there. That's what we do around here. You
All
are
right.
good.
All right, cool. Yeah, that's the one thing that's ruined it for me and everybody. I think I could probably speak for every single counselor that this is not what I signed up for. This is not, back in the day when you wanted to become a counselor, you were a sponsor,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. All you had to do was be sober for a couple of years and you could be a sponsor, or you could be
Yeah.
work in the field. And now it's very clinical. They want their notes done perp format or whatever you have out there, and repeating the same information over and over, and invasive questions and health questions and mental health questions and ASAM dimensions and a behavioral health assessment and um, health screening questionnaire and DIT to find out how many out of 11 you have to see how addicted you are, and then you got to put it all into the computer, and you got to do the calomes, which is the demographic questions, and it's ridiculous. It takes like 3 hours to do an intake.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, like, little background on me, I've wore a hard hat the majority of my recovery life. I've been around the rooms, had a little slip, but overall I've been around the rooms for, over 10 years now. And I was driving a concrete truck for a lot of those years. And it was only recently that I, thought, well, I felt called, right? I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
come work. I wanted to help people. And I knew it was going to be a massive pay cut. So I didn't make that transition for the money. I made it to do what I would like to do. And you can imagine my shock with me having not a single college credit hour to my name, to find out that the person who has never struggled with addiction or seen it up close and personal has more say in a treatment plan than I ever will until such time I go to college. Um, that's the type of stuff that kind of, I don't know, it bugs me, right?
So are you talking about like LCSWs or LMFTs, or people that
Yeah. So,
that
like,
that are the ones that sign off on everything, that may or may not have any experience in recovery, just mental health?
I can't even make recommendations on a treatment plan, right? Like, the only thing I can do is work within my little department, and that's what we got. But ultimately the say and all of that is to the people with the case manager out here in Oklahoma. We call them case management 2. Then you bump up to therapist, counselor,
Oh,
all
okay.
that
Yeah,
good
case
stuff.
management. I hate case management. So let me explain a little bit how it works in California. A lot of people do think I'm a case manager, even people in the field. They're like, "Oh, we'll
Yeah.
take my client to get his license." I don't do that. I'm not a case manager. I am a KDAC 2 or a CCAP, whatever you call it. It's certified alcohol and drug counselor. I think it's IC and RC is a national certification. And actually, I've actually looked in Oklahoma. We were looking at houses there. Might move there someday. But anyway, long story short, what I do is the drug and alcohol counseling part of it. So I actually can do treatment plans. I do everything from the intake process to the assessment to the treatment plan, to the one-on-one counseling and the groups. I facilitate groups, which are all on Zoom right now.
Yeah.
We haven't had in-person groups in 2 years. Ugh, California.
That's fucking crazy.
And
Crazy.
don't get me started on the vaccine mandates. Oh my God, I will flip out. Vaccine mandates almost ruined my fucking job.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. They're so 80% of people here are still wearing masks at the mall, even though the mandate's been lifted for like a month. It's insane. And the other thing, I mean, if you want to go down the vaccine path, we can talk about that. But basically, I can do everything. Someone has to sign off on my treatment plans, but I write them. They have to be approved. Every place I've worked, the clinical supervisor has had a different style. So I came into this place with 16 years of experience writing treatment plans, but the clinical supervisor wanted them written a certain way. So I had to completely change the way I structure my treatment plans, the way I word things to make her happy, which almost made me quit on a couple of occasions. So I know what you're talking about as far as the frustration of the people above you, having say in what you do. But I just learned to adapt. I'm like, you know what, Liberty counselor, just fucking do what she wants you to do. And I made a template and I make the little cookie cutter treatment plans, and I change the drug of choice, and I change maybe what the relapse triggers are. And I just pump out a couple of them a week, and I don't like doing it that way. I thought they were more personalized before, but that's what she fucking wanted. So that's what I did.
That's what we got to do. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, like on the history of, addiction in America and recovery, it's just, and I mentioned this on somebody's show the other night, but what bothers me is that, 50, 60 years ago, the prevailing medical thought of the day was that addicts cannot get, recovery. It's not possible. It's a moral failing. It's not a disease, yada, yada, yada. And then it comes all the way to modern day after, programs like NAAA and the whole litany of other, recovery organizations found success by working amongst themselves. Now the medical community is like, no. Yeah, they can get clean, but we know the best way. That's what I see happening.
Let us jump in and give you some paperwork so that you can prove, you can give us measurable outcomes, and you can prove to us, because this person has gone from a 3 to a 2 on their ASAM questionnaire. It proves that they have made progress from the beginning to the end of treatment, and then we can give you more money. Measurable outcomes, as you know, statistics can be skewed to say whatever the fuck you want them to say, right?
Yep.
And it's just a matter of asking the questions, checking the box. Oh, look how much you've improved. And you send them on their way. And that's what they ask questions about demographics. They want to know what race people are, what gender they are, what non-gender they are, what and then they can say, oh, 20% of Caucasians are doing this drug, and they have a measurable outcome of, going from a 3 to a 2 in dimension 5 and blah, blah, blah. That's their thing that they do, right? Well, we're in the trenches getting all the information, and then somewhere somebody takes all that information and makes it into statistics, and that's how we get our money. But
yeah,
as far as what you're talking about there's a couple of really good shows that I watched that gave me new insight into this whole drug and alcohol thing, because I'm libertarian now. I've been libertarian for about 10 years. That's another story. But one of them was a history of drugs. I believe it was on A&E. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it has like the history of cocaine, the history of speed, the history of marijuana, and almost every drug law ever written was designed to oppress some group of people, either African Americans with cocaine, or Mexicans with making marijuana illegal in the 30s. And it was all a bunch of propaganda, because we're going through depression, and they were, you can't see me, but I'm doing finger quotes, stealing our jobs. Basically all drugs through, the Chinese with opium, they're going to have sex with all the white women. So we have to make sure we make opium illegal so we can lock them up. Every single drug law all throughout history has been designed to oppress some minority or some group of people. And then, so as far as drug laws and propaganda, that was eye-opening for me. I used to show it to my clients in groups, and they would get so mad at how the whole drugs being illegal thing evolved. And then the other thing that was real eye-opening to me was, I think it's a movie that's about 20 years old now. It's called Pleasure Unwoven. Have you ever seen that one?
I have not.
Oh, it's really good. It talks about the disease model of addiction. And I've probably seen it, because I show it in groups, I've probably seen it about 20 times. Every time I watch it, there's something new in there that I didn't notice before. But basically, it explains how addiction is a disease of the brain and should be treated like any other disease, and there shouldn't be this moral failing and incarceration if you get addicted to something.
I'm going to have to check that out, because that tracks, that's.
Yeah. It was very eye-opening. Even though it's old, it's still, the information still stands.
So, and how since you've been around the industry for quite a while, paperwork aside, how has the approach changed to addicts that you see coming in the doors now, as opposed to how it was back then?
You mean, how has the approach changed as far as the clinician, or the?
Yes, like how
we do treatment.
Yes.
So it used to be that every counselor could have their own style, which may or may not be a good thing, because a lot of counselors have their own issues.
Yeah.
It's not the recovery field is not a bedrock of mental health as far as counselors are concerned.
Right.
And even the higher ups, people that are MFTs, I don't know one MFT that doesn't have some sort of trauma history, or, not to put anybody, I'm not using any names, but literally everyone I've known who's any sort of mental health counselor, therapist, has their own shit. So I've seen a lot of different styles of counseling. I have seen the Marine approach, where you just kind of yell at the guys, and very Delancey Street, which is a program in San Francisco. You're like, suck it up, you pussies, and, be a man, and pretty much kind of like the military approach, which works for some guys. I've seen the prison approach. I've seen counselors that kind of use the prison respect and manning up and that kind of approach. I've seen, I had a coworker that was very direct, to the point where she had a client that was actually a sex worker, and she told her, "What are you going to do when your pussy dries up?" I mean,
wow.
Yeah. You can't talk like that to people anymore, right? They make you go to training if you say the word pussy, or if you if you imply that someone might have a pussy, because you can't say that anymore, because you don't know.
Right.
So it's a lot more, I would say today, to a certain extent, it's more professional, and it's way more woke culture. So much woke culture.
Constant woke culture. Constant.
It's like I work in a pit of liberal every single day, to where I made a comment about Fauci, and my coworker was like, "Oh my God, I love Fauci." Like, really? Have you read a book lately? Like, have you? By the way, I just want to plug Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s book, The Real Anthony Fauci. Awesome book. So many citations in it. Very eye-opening about the whole vaccine industry and the whole COVID thing. Very eye-opening. But anyway, sorry, I got off on a tangent. But the point is, I work with a lot of uninformed, liberal, Democrat, woke people. And if you even use terminology like people used 20 years ago in the field, you will get sent on an 8-hour cultural awareness training or some bullshit, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's good to a certain extent to not snap somebody's last string if they're coming in already fragile and somebody yells at them and, they're like, fuck it, I'm going to go overdose. Yeah, you don't want that, but you also don't want to be so woke that you have to tiptoe around everybody. We got to find a happy medium somewhere. So I think it's changed. To answer your question, I don't know if I did or not. It's changed somewhat for the better, but also it's gone way overboard with the wokeness.
Yeah.
In treatment.
And that's what we see out here. So like, Oklahoma is a solid red state, but
yes,
the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services is ran by anything but red, right? Like this is where all the Democrats, and the woke progressive movement has kind of centered in on, and they run this show.
Oh, that's sad to hear, because I wanted to move to Oklahoma. So they all kind of gravitate towards the helping fields, I guess.
Yeah. And, here's the thing, right? Like they're able to reach a lot of people that maybe otherwise couldn't have been reached. You kind of had a similar story to mine. Like I came from the left, like I was a Democrat at one point in time. So I understand the egalitarianism that drives a lot of them and the reason why they land and where they land. But it's the kind of like weird, overcompensating attitude they have for like racial issues that may or may not exist, and other things. I don't understand kind of some of the approach to a lot of it. I think the worst part of them though is the bureaucracy. It's the fact that what they value more, they value the system more than the mission, right? Like that's.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. Absolutely. They're ruining it. They're ruining. Yes. It's very hard to find good counselors. It's very hard. Whenever we have an opening, we have a hard time hiring because nobody wants to do all that fucking paperwork.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to have the stress of you have to have the treatment plan done in 7 days or 10 days. You have to have the assessment done. You have to have the note done after you meet with the client within 48 hours, and this form has to be there and that form has to be there, and meetings, we have meetings all the time, and we have it's like you can't it's physically impossible sometimes to do all the work that they want you to do.
Yes.
And it's very stressful, and there's a very high burnout rate, and it's not because of the clients. I mean, yeah, it's stressful sometimes listening to people's problems, and it's emotionally draining, and a lot of them are like emotional vampires that just suck the life out of you. But the thing that sucks the life out of me the most is the paperwork and the bureaucracy.
Yes.
And the clinical stuff, and to a certain extent, and I don't know if it's like this in Oklahoma, but it's certainly like this in California. As a libertarian, I get discouraged seeing people with their entitled attitude and they're getting all this free shit, and they're just not grateful for it, and they're not appreciative of it, and they're not taking care of it, and they're still continuing to blow it time after time with their free housing, with their free this, with their free that. They don't value it, and it's not working. It's not you can't put a heroin addict in some free housing, and who was just out of the river, was homeless, and you dump them in this housing and give them a case manager, and they end up having all their homeless friends come over and take showers and party. And it's not the case 100% of the time, of course, but it's the case way too often.
Well, and here's the problem that I have with that too. So what that does is reinforces this already existing stigma. Okay. When you make the guy across town who's never smoked a joint pay for the heroin addicts free housing,
yes,
that's not fixing that conversation. You're not changing hearts and minds with that. We're not fixing that problem. Whereas, yeah, you gave that person somewhere good to sleep, but they're not willing to do anything to invest in themselves. That's the wrong approach, right? And that's
absolutely. And no one's ever asked me what a good approach would be. I have ideas, you know what I mean? I work with these people every day. The people they should be asking, who's ready for housing should be the counselors.
Yes.
I agree. The people that know who's motivated and who's not. Ask me who you should give an apartment to, or the converted motels that Gavin Newsom spent billions of dollars on to plop down homeless people in, the middle of town and give them a place to live. And, so I know clients that it's worked really well for them and they use that to better their lives. But for the most part, it's been a shit show. It's been an absolute shit show. And the neighbors, the NIMBYs, not in my backyard, have turned out to be right. A lot of times it does bring down the neighborhood. It does bring drug traffic. It does bring garbage and homelessness, but we have a serious homeless problem in California, and it seems to have gotten worse. I don't know if of course it has to do with addiction and mental health, but I've lived here all my life and I have never seen the amount of homeless people and mental health issues that I'm seeing now. It's just crazy.
What do you think is obviously at these organizations, talking to the counselor about who should get housing priority and who shouldn't, that's one thing, but what else do you see that, to any libertarians out there in the crowd who may be working in the industry, like what other things could we be pushing for to fix some of these issues we're faced with?
Getting people sober is about all we can do.
Right.
Making them, trying to make them give a shit and have some self-esteem. And then hopefully with sobriety, the rest of it will fall into place. That's literally all I can do. All I can do is listen to people. There's a lot of power in just listening to people's problems and listening to their story, right? And having them know that someone cares. But as far as helping them get their life together, I can't do that. All I could do is encourage them and hopefully make them look at their drug abuse and their addiction, and then send them out in the world better prepared for that job that they're going to get, or getting their kids back, or getting a place to live. There's not much I can do. Nobody fucking asked me, hey, what would be the best thing to do? Who should we give housing to? No, I've done the VSPADAT assessment, which is a very long assessment that assesses you for your level of homelessness and puts you in a queue. And then your name is randomly picked at some point for housing. It's a shit show, and somebody's making a lot of money off of it, and it's not doing what it's supposed to do. But other than, I don't have any say once I do that assessment. I just put it in the computer. I don't know what happens to it after that.
Tossing it into the ether, hitting that send button and just off it goes.
Yeah, off it goes. And they say, well, how long is it going to be? And I'm like, I have no fucking idea.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's so expensive to live out here. Even people that don't have drug problems and mental health problems are living in a house, in a room in a house for $1,200.
That's crazy as hell.
Yeah, so there's people that have their shit together that are homeless, much less somebody who's homeless and has mental health issues and is unmedicated, and they're also have an addiction going. My solution, there's a shelter around here that works pretty well. It's like a tier system. You go in, you stay in a dorm, and then if you want to get your shit together, you can work your way up to having your own little place. That is what we need to do.
I like that idea a lot. So like it's community living whenever you, like tier 1, you're in the bunkhouse setting with a whole bunch of other people. But if you don't cause a commotion, you don't have any flare-ups, you don't start any shit, then you can move up to I like that a lot.
Yeah. And then when you're a working person, you can, you share a place with one other person, or you have your own little place, and then eventually work your way out into society. Not that I think a meritocracy is a good idea, but to a certain extent it is. I mean, you're going to be a drain on the system your whole life, or are you going to contribute something to society? Let's help you get sober, get your mental health stable, with the ultimate goal being to give back to society and not just get free shit the rest of your life. As a libertarian, when I first became a libertarian, you take the little test, right, to see where you are on the scale. I believe I took it at a gun show that I was at. The only question that I was really conflicted about was the social programs, because that's what I do. I work for social programs. I work people are giving their tax dollars. I'm giving my tax dollars, basically paying my own salary, but people are giving their tax dollars to this program so that I can fix people. And that is my livelihood. That's what I do. So of course, I think that they have some merit, but in a perfect libertarian society, you can do all the drugs you want. Everything's legal, but don't come whining to me when you get a drug problem.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
not I'm not paying for it. You know, you want to walk around dressed like a female dolphin and take a dump on the street while you're shooting heroin. That's fine, right? As long as you're not hurting anyone. But when you get sick, when you have a mental health breakdown, when you overdose, then we're required to pay for that. And that's where the problem is for me. I'm very conflicted as a person in recovery and also libertarian. Like, I don't know what to do with that sometimes.
Well, the way, so kind of, look, you got way more time in the seat than I do, in this field, but kind of where I'm at initially is thinking, at the very, if I didn't work here, somebody else would be in that seat, right? And that somebody else very well could be one of those talking heads who urges people to stay connected to the system. Whereas what I can do from where I'm sitting is really urge people to realize the power that they have to correct their own life and to divorce from the system, to be self-reliant, to be independent, and
Yes.
so that funding's not going to go away anytime soon. And let's be honest, if tomorrow libertarians swept every single race in every single country,
that would be so great.
it would be awesome. I would love it. But the last thing I would want to see cut is social programs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, yeah. And I'm sure I'll get shouted down, whatever. The purity tests drive me insane, but I am not a left libertarian by any stretch of the imagination, but
me neither, not fiscally, but I know what you mean. We waste so much money on other bullshit, including giving money to foreign countries and everything else. We could invest 1/10 of that or 1% of that into helping people empower themselves and help their addictions. We could fix the whole world, but we're not in charge. So
nope, unfortunately. Maybe next year, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a counselor, do you try to bring your libertarian values? We're supposed to be impartial, but it's really hard to not be a libertarian at work.
So, yeah. So kind of like the one thing that I do is I ask leading questions, especially in client consultation and treatment team meetings. I like to ask those questions that make them answer their own flawed logic.
Yes, that's what coaching's all about, leading questions.
So
yep.
And I'm using that on, other staff members. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm not like, it's not a us versus them type of thing. These are people who are, look, they're taking the same pay that I am. They have the same, drive and passion that I do. It's just, they have a little bit different philosophy on how to tackle those issues. But I like to think that some of the conversations that I've been able to have regarding over prescribing Suboxone, some of that stuff is actually starting to make a little bit of a difference. Like I am noticing some of these conversations I'm having, granted they're more one-on-one and not in a group setting, but I do see some minds being changed. And so that's kind of like my big rub right now, right?
Yeah, doing it one-on-one is sometimes the only way to do it.
I think so.
I mean, it really is. You have a conversation with someone, and like you said, ask those questions, and sometimes they don't know why they think the way they do. They just do. What they've been told. So I know it's your podcast, but how are things out in Oklahoma as far as, well, actually, maybe I should take a break first before I ask. I was going to ask about COVID and how.
Yeah, go take a break. We can pause real quick and we can get right back into it.
All right. I'll be right back.
All right. You're asking about COVID?
Oh, yeah, because we're talking about how, the system is interfering with our ability to do the job and causing us frustration. And it's already hard enough to do the work emotionally, dealing with the clients, especially, I don't know how many co-occurring disorders they have where you work, but it's almost 95% of our clients. dealing with criminal justice, dealing with, the being in a very liberal field, then top it off with a bunch of paperwork, which is, like I said, the most frustrating. And then on top of that, they hit us with COVID restrictions, which were way more restrictive in California than they were in Oklahoma, because I have friends in Oklahoma. It almost ruined me. I almost quit a couple of times. It was when I decided I wanted to do coaching instead of counseling at some point, because I really saw how our freedoms were being taken away, and nobody else seemed to see it. Everybody was fucking fine with it. And it just very discouraging. It's like, do you not see what's going on here? But we all need vaccines to keep us safe. And I'm like, I was so frustrated.
It's fucking insane. I mean, and I'm just going to be real. A lot of those conversations I stayed the fuck out of. And admittedly, I ended up getting the shot because my job was on the line. I regret it, but I mean,
don't get the booster. Don't get the booster. So
no.
I had to go through hell to not get the shot. Full disclosure, I am not vaccinated, nor is anyone in my household, my 2 adult children and my husband, for different reasons. And I got a religious exemption. I saw this stuff happening. Almost quit, and then I got a religious exemption, and it was approved. And then 2 months later, they said, well, despite the fact that you have a religious exemption, there's we have the worst health, whatever the hell she's called, Sarah Cody, the health director for Santa Clara County, is an evil beast who kept this county more stringent than I could walk a mile away, and it's different rules than it is in our county. And unfortunately, my work site was located in our county. So we had the most ridiculous, oppressive rules. And at one point, I was not allowed to step foot into my office building because I was unvaccinated.
It's just fucking silly. That is
so silly. I was working from home, right? And they had to make accommodations. They didn't have to. They could have laid me off. They threatened me with being put on unpaid leave. They coerced me. They made my job hell. And it was because of, we're just doing what the county is telling us that we have to do. So I got the religious exemption. And then I was told I had, if I did go to work, the 1 day a week that I went to work, check this out. I have to test twice a week, even though I'm already only going to the office once a week, which is, I mean, explain that to me. Explain it to me. Why can't I test the day before I go into work? What the fuck do you care if I have COVID at home, right? Wow. I got COVID after Christmas, myself and my entire family, after working in the field for 2 years, unvaccinated, never got infected. We all got it after Christmas. We all took ivermectin. We all lived. That's another story altogether. And this is after Christmas that they put these new restrictions. And I'm like, look, I just fucking had COVID. I'm not going to get it again. I have natural immunity right now, but I still had to test twice a week. They sent me to get fit tested. You worked in the trades, right? Did you ever get fit tested for a mask?
No. Oklahoma was never that.
Yeah, I know. Oklahoma was awesome. So they put this tube over your head, this like plastic thing with a window in the front with a little hose. And then you bring a mask with you, and they spray shit in your face and ask you if you can smell it. And if you can't smell it, then that means your mask is working. And I had to go get this done. I'm like the only one in my agency. They did all this shit to me to break me down and make me get the vaccine, and I would not do it. And because my religion, my God says, I don't need to, I'm going to be fine. And if I do get COVID, I'll be fine. And that was true. You know, I did, and I was. And it became to me like raging against the machine, like fighting the man, like, well, fuck you and your vaccine. I'm really not doing it now, because the more you pressure me I'm the kind of person that, as many addicts are, right?
Yeah.
The more you pressure me, the more I'm going to get pissed and say no. So I got through all that, but long story short, I am a smart, strong Amazonian woman who has a good relationship with God, who doesn't have mental health issues, who doesn't have an addiction. Imagine being a client
Yeah.
and being told you need to do this thing or you can't get treatment, or you can't go live at an SLE or a recovery residence. You can't go to a residential treatment center unless you're vaccinated. You can't. And, can you imagine?
Yeah. Yeah, I can. Because here's the thing, right? So I had a slip in late 2019, kind of went out for a couple months, came back. I got checked into treatment in January of 2020. And this treatment facility is, in my opinion, the best one in Oklahoma. I mean, they're wonderful, real laid back. They have family counseling programs, so like my wife could come in because God know what we do. I mean, I created a whole bunch of problems there, and so she was able to come in. We were able to have sessions just one-on-one with the counselor and work through a lot of shit. My kid could come see me. There was H&I meetings coming in the facility. It was plugged in. Within 2 months of me leaving, because it was a 30-day program, within 2 months of me leaving, they shut down all family programs. They shut down all H&I. And I stayed, connected with a couple of the counselors up there and just stayed in touch. And whenever somebody was leaving there and coming back to, near where I live, they would hook me up with them. And just people were falling off left and right because the industry changed so fucking much, man. You outlawed what made it work. With this COVID shit.
I feel you. I actually worked when COVID started. I worked at a residential treatment center, a men's residential treatment center that I'd been at for a couple of years when all this shit started. That place alone, I could talk about for an hour as far as mismanagement and some fucked up shit that happens there. It sounds nothing like the place you went to. Family counseling, what's that? It was more like babysitting and de-escalating all fucking day with a bunch of kids. Like, he's breathing my air. He looked at me. He's disrespecting me. It was so tiresome. Plus, on top of that, all the, the paperwork and all the other shit. And it was mismanaged. And we had no structure and we had no leadership. And that place ended up closing. But I was there at the beginning of COVID. And the day that we had to say no family visits, and the day that I had to put a sign on the door because H&I couldn't come in anymore and do meetings, that was like, I knew at that point in time, it's going to be bad for recovery. It's going to be very bad.
Yeah.
Because
and the numbers, the overdose numbers reflect it. And I know that not everyone can be attributed to that, but I promise you a healthy portion of them are.
Opiate. I just took a training the other day. Opiate use is twice as high as it was 10 years ago. And I know for a fact that there were more overdoses during COVID. I saw it happen. One of my son's friends overdosed, and we lost clients during COVID because fentanyl.
Yep.
And just addiction rates went up. Nobody was getting locked up for anything. Not that getting locked up is good. Right.
Right. No,
they weren't taking people to jail for anything. It's like, oh, you broke that window while you were high and stole a bunch of shit. Well, here's a citation. Come back in 2 years when the courts are open again. And it was bad for recovery the last 2 years. And we're still cleaning up the mess. It's not over by any. We have no groups. We have Zoom groups.
Here's the thing, right? The dope man doesn't exactly follow CDC guidelines.
No, he does not. No.
So you shut down the meetings, but that dude kept his door open, man. I mean, so obviously, of course.
And the isolation, that was the worst thing.
Oh man.
That I hear, because I asked the questions about, I discreetly ask people how they feel about things in general, as far as the lockdowns and all that. I can't say when I'm talking to a client, okay, I'll give you an example. I had a client who got the vaccine and got a blood clot. Her sister also got the vaccine and got a blood clot. like immediately after, and she had mental health and obviously addiction, or she wouldn't have been in my office. And I said, did you file a report with VAERS, vaccine adverse reaction, whatever it stands for?
Yeah.
It's where you report if you have a vaccine injury. And she said, what's that? Right. So I sort of went online and showed her what VAERS is, and but so the point being that I can get a little bit political without jeopardizing my job, but I'm definitely 100% biased towards liberty, and I was 100% against all the lockdowns and stuff that was going on. I don't think it helped a goddamn thing. Sorry, Lord. I don't think it helped a thing. Maybe the first couple of weeks, but all in all, the devastation from being locked down was 1,000,000% worse than it would have been if we'd just stayed open. Look at Florida, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that I am glad that Oklahoma's facilities were pretty quick to start opening H&I meetings back up. And I say quick, I mean, you're still looking at a solid year where nobody was going in anywhere, bottom line, period. The majority of our meetings stayed open,
Really? That's amazing. All of ours went virtual, and some of them are still virtual, and some of them are half and half, like a hybrid meeting.
So the ones that did close had some kind of like outlaw backyard shit going on, where we were kind of meeting in people's backyards or in their living rooms, and it was just kind of hopping around, which, that's a throwback. That's how it used to be.
It is like the 1930s, right?
Yeah. That's how we started. So fuck it, So, but I don't know, I hope that we never go through it again. And I hope that the overall recovery community, realized exactly what we gave up in that process. So I work an NA program. NA is my home. I love Narcotics Anonymous, and we have a world convention every so many years, and our last one was supposed to be in Australia, and they canceled it.
Yeah, Australia, don't get me started. Oh my God.
Ooh, and I just think about all those addicts that are in Australia right now who had such a wonderful opportunity to have a shining light on their path ripped away for the sake of political football. It's disgusting.
It is disgusting. And don't think that somebody didn't make money off of it.
Oh,
right?
For sure.
Why would they? This is what my liberal friends say. Why would they do that? Why would they not want people to get help? Why would they, unless it was really important, why would they do this and take all this stuff? They don't see the big picture. Like, somebody's making billions of dollars off of the government funding for COVID and off of vaccines and off of every time there's a COVID death or a sickness, or, somebody made a ton of money. It wasn't me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The rich got richer during this whole fucking pandemic, and the poor died off from addiction and loneliness. And that's exactly the way that the elites want it. The reptilians, as my daughter says.
For sure.
She's the one that got me started on Twitter, by the way, during the whole thing. I'm not supposed to talk about her, but anyway, social media, I mean, that's what saved a lot of people during this whole thing that happened. I'd never done a Zoom meeting before in my life. So one good thing that came out of it for people that understand technology, for some 80-year-old that doesn't know how to use Zoom, no, too bad, you're going to be lonely and drunk. But the Zoom is great in the sense that you can be anonymous and you don't have to wear pants. You don't have to drive.
Yeah.
You can log on and get the support that you need. So if anything good came out of COVID, it was the fact that some meetings became more accessible for some people. And another good thing that came out for probably 10% of the people that was a good thing was people that were social drinkers and users, the bars were closed.
Yeah. Yes.
So they can't go to a bar and they can't drink. And of course it was all 90% bad. I mean, they even closed the churches where I live. See, that's my main source of support. was my church family and my ministries and my Sunday service and being actively involved in that. And our governor said, F you, God, we're not,
Yeah.
we're not going to let you have church either. And that's where I actually found the current church that I go to now is there was only 2 in the Bay Area that stayed open during COVID. And that was when I started going to my current church. They no masks, never closed. They're facing $2.5 million in fines, but they would not close. And they're very political. They don't care. They give no shits about the government. And I really found that to be refreshing during COVID.
Hell yeah, that's punk rock, man. That's what it's all about right there.
Yeah, and church helps a lot of people too. And they, so they took away the meetings, they took away church, they took away access to treatment. I had one client who was not vaccinated, and she had mental health and addiction issues, and she could not get into, a clean and sober living house because they all had vaccine requirements. And if I don't advocate for her, who's going to? Everybody else says, oh, you have mental health problems. You're just being a conspiracy theorist. You're just being paranoid about not wanting to get a vaccine. Why don't you just get it? And she could tell me, no, I don't trust it. I don't. And I'm like, I get you. I understand, you know, and stick to your guns. And we ended up finding her a place that didn't have a vaccine requirement, but 95% of them did. And also, if you were in a recovery residence, used to be called transitional housing, you could not go anywhere. You were stuck at home. You couldn't go out for months and months and months. I'm not talking 2 weeks. I'm talking like a year.
Yeah, that's it's baffling that anybody would think there would be a positive outcome from that. It's just
it is baffling. And this is even normal people with no mental health issues and no addiction problems developed addiction problems and developed mental health issues because of all this shit that was going on. And who made the money? Not me.
Not me.
Not me.
Guarantee it, not me. So like one of the things that really pissed me off, and I kind of touched on, I ended up getting the J&J shot. So I just started working at a facility. It was an inpatient residential treatment center. COVID swept through there, and I ended up getting it. I was home for 2 weeks, and I was pretty sick. Yeah, it sucked. It was like the flu, but whatever. I got an email on the day before I was supposed to come back that said, hey, the company just instituted a vaccine mandate, so you need to get the shot before you can come back. And I'm like, I fucking have COVID right now. You want me to get I don't understand.
Fine. Oh, you're not supposed to get a COVID vaccine for months and months and months after you've had COVID, right? It's so dangerous. And they're just like, oh, well, now that you're better,
yeah. So I went to my doctor and I got a 30 or a 90-day exemption. And, this was when the Biden's mandates were still, set to go before the Supreme Court. So I was hopeful, but we saw how that turned out, and so, if I would have been a little bit more tenured, I think I could have taken the route that you did and fought it a little bit more. But to be honest, like being a guy working in this industry with no college degree, I'm an entry-level position. Like I didn't feel like I had any say,
I have no tenure. That's the thing about this field is you have, you're a counselor and then you move up to being a counselor and then you move up to being a counselor. There's like, unless I go get a bachelor's degree, which I'm not about to do at my age, college debt, no, thank you. So I can make $1 an hour more. I don't think so. And be $50,000 in debt or whatever, then I could probably be a clinical supervisor, which comes with its own set of stressors and difficulties, having to go to a bunch of meetings and sign off on people's bullshit. I don't think so. Education in this field, I've been doing this a long time, so I have the the practical experience, but there's nowhere to go in this field. I don't care what degree you have. Maybe you can open your own treatment center. Then you got to deal with all that paperwork. You know, I'll pass on that. I just wanted to help people. I didn't want to, I don't want to be in charge. I don't like being in charge. I don't like, I'm okay with just doing the task at hand and doing what other people are doing. I don't have this desire within me to make it to the top. Thank God, because I'm in the wrong field. But
see, I've thought about doing like getting my wellness certification, my wellness coach, recovery coach certification. I got my peer recovery support specialist, but I've thought about getting that other one. And I've thought about using that to approach like large companies in my area and just say, hey, if you ever have, you know, an employee who's struggling, like, you know, you can hire me. I'll come in here, have sessions with them, do whatever. I don't know, maybe trying to figure out something to do with that.
Yes, that's the way to do it, dude. That's what I'm trying to do. That's a really good approach, is going to a company that already has money.
Yeah.
And, you know, doing groups or classes or some sort of individual coaching there, getting that contract. That's the way to make money coaching. Hoping to do that at some point myself. Cause like, you know, I don't have a problem talking to people. I don't have a problem talking in front of people. And I know how to do the one-on-one stuff from work. So
right.
That's a very good way to make money. Yeah.
And I think that by doing that, you could probably walk outside of the lines of some of these batshit crazy restrictions and regulations. So like, for instance, like you're a counselor where you are in California. If you wanted to do that same thing out here without a college degree, it ain't going to happen. You have to have, I think it's an associate's. I know for sure a bachelor's to be a case manager too. Yeah, you cannot even do that. And so like I said, I think with that wellness coach certification, which I can get without a college degree, hell, if I'm just working with businesses, the state doesn't have a say in that.
Yes. So I have, like I said, the IC and RC, which is a national certification, although states vary. Like if I moved to Texas, which I was thinking about, I would have to get whatever the equivalent of their state licensure is, may or may not be transferable. But I should be able to, you know, work in the field wherever I go, because it's the exact same fucking thing wherever you go, right? But the coaching thing, you cannot bill as a coach under like the alcohol and drug counseling umbrella. I can't bill as a KDAC. I would have to, but I can bill as a coach, which is one of the reasons why I chose coaching. If I could go into my own business as a certified alcohol and drug counselor with 17 years experience and just set up shop somewhere, I would do it. But my certification is not something that allows me to bill. So that's another reason why I chose the coaching route, is then I can have my own business.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll absolutely stump to get you out here to Oklahoma. We need you. So, you know.
I have a very good friend in Guthrie who's been trying to get me to move to Oklahoma since she moved there. And I went out and actually took Route 66 last summer, saw the Grand Canyon, made Oklahoma our final destination before we drove down through Texas. Yeah. And I really liked it. The tornado shit kind of scares me, but because I'm from California native, and things coming out of the sky trying to kill you is kind of scary.
Well, I'll be real honest. Like, we have had a drastic reduction in tornadoes in Oklahoma. It used to be a lot worse than it was, but seems like everything kind of goes to the east of us now. Like I'm about 30-45 minutes away from Guthrie, where I live. So yeah, this area, you'd be golden.
Yeah. And then my daughter's moving to Missouri, so that's not too far from Oklahoma. And then we were thinking of Texas. There's addicts everywhere. Wherever I go, there's going to be people addicted. Texas is Oklahoma's got legal marijuana, right? Or is Texas
medical
marijuana? All I saw in Oklahoma was churches and cannabis stores.
Yeah.
I swear to God, there's one on each corner. Right next to the Presbyterian church, there's a dispensary. Right next to the Baptist church, there's a dispensary. So many dispensaries, whereas Texas is still illegal.
Yeah.
And speaking of funding, I mean, is criminal justice a funding source or what?
Yes.
So much money
Yes.
from criminal justice.
Yeah.
Just federal, state, Prop 47, parole, probation. There's so many different programs that got like funding through taxpayer funding, like Prop 47, which I advocated for stupidly because I was, we were lied to. The three strikes law, I advocated to get that overturned. And it's totally backfired in the face of California. You literally can't go to jail for anything now. And people are just running into stores and taking whatever the fuck they want, running out. Nobody chases them, and it's oh my god. But when you finally do get arrested for something, and there's any sort of drug, anything in your record, whether it's you had some meth on you or you were under the influence at the time, they'll send you through us to get an assessment. Probation will just send them through. So, and it used to be, this is one thing that's changed a little bit. It used to be if probation sent you to treatment, you went to treatment, right? That's how I got sober.
Yeah.
A nudge from the judge. He said, go to treatment. And I actually went to a 9-month intensive outpatient program for women because I was told that I had to, and was the first person ever to graduate in the actual 9 months because I was there every day. But it does work sometimes, whether you're forced or whether you're voluntarily there. I think it still has the same outcome. It's like 50-50, right? But recently, people that are sent by probation, they now have to meet medical criteria.
What do you mean?
So it used to be if your probation officer thought you had, let's say you got a DUI or you had a possession, or under the influence, they would send you through to treatment. We would say, okay, you're on probation, you're going to do treatment groups, even residential, and then you send the report to the probation officer saying the client's doing great, the client's not doing great. They completed whatever, and that's part of your probation requirement, right?
Yeah.
Now, if somebody comes through, and I've had this happen several times, especially in the past year, somebody comes through and they maybe got busted with some cocaine or some Molly, or they were in a car with somebody that had drugs, or they got a DUI, and they come through and they answer the questions on the diagnostic questionnaire, and hopefully they're being truthful, and they don't meet medical criteria. They don't have 2 out of the 11 or 3 out of the 11. They just, got caught in an unfortunate circumstance. I can say now, hey, this person does not need to be in treatment. And the judge cannot force them to go anymore. So that's kind of a good thing. I mean, the judge, ultimately, he can force them, like if he tells them to do it anyway, or maybe they're lying or whatever. But I've had a couple people that don't meet medical criteria, and then I have to call their probation officer, get the whole story, and they'll say, no, I just sent them through your way to get an assessment. If you don't think that they have a problem, then that's fine, which is great to hear, because I don't want to treat people that don't want to be there.
No, here's the thing is, you're not doing anybody any favors by hitching them to that, right? There might be some worth in exposing somebody to recovery before they're ready, to a degree, but at the same time, I think that it does just as much harm. It keeps them running away from recovery, so where that rock bottom just got a little bit deeper, right? So
yeah, if they're forced to do it, because know how addicts are. There's some good things you can do with people. You can do drug education, right? You can teach them how much is a serving. Okay, you got the DUI now, so let's talk about serving size. 1 beer, 1 shot, 1 5-ounce glass of wine. Did you know this, that when you pour your wine into a giant glass, that's not 1 serving because it's 1 glass, it's 3 servings, right?
Right.
Just teaching people stuff like that, not to mix drugs with alcohol. You can do harm reduction. You can just give them a place to vent and be heard. So there are some good things that you can do, but they got to be honest in their answers. And I have to be able to draw those honest answers out of them and say, look, looks like you have to be here, right? Like your probation officer really wants you to be here. You're saying you don't have a problem. Let's see if we can really get honest and answer these questions and see if we can make this a worthwhile experience for you to be here for 12 weeks, and just make the best of it and play the game and see if you can learn something. Just stay open-minded.
Yeah, I would imagine that's a pretty successful approach.
Yeah, it is. It's the ultimate coaching. I know you don't want to be here. I know you don't think you have to be here, but since you have to be here, what can we do?
Yeah, you're here now. Let's do something with it. I like that. Liberty Counselor, this has been an awesome conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to hear your story and kind of hear, your take on the industry and kind of have my own frustrations kind of solidified, like validated.
Validated, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. No, you're not crazy. The industry sucks. It's the work is great, but it's an industry. It's a business, just like any other business.
The system.
And we're working within a sometimes evil, very frustrating, especially in California, extremely liberal system, and you just have to do the best you can and try to be the voice of reason and the libertarian light that shines, in the agency.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it would be great if we could just do whatever the fuck we wanted to do and not have any consequences. But when there are consequences, then we're here to help, right?
Yep, for sure. Well, one thing that I have everybody do who comes on and, talks about their recovery at all is I like to have a little bit of a segment at the end for you to reach out and talk to that one person who may be in the audience who is suffering, who is struggling and trying to get clean, but they just can't. What words or advice do you have for them?
Wow, that's good, because there's such a variety. Like, everybody says you have to hit bottom, right? But you don't have to hit bottom to decide that you want to make a change. You don't have to be homeless living down by the river. You don't have to have lost everything. You can start making a change before all that stuff happens. And if there's any inkling in you, any sort of thought in your head that, maybe I need to look at how much I'm using or drinking, maybe I need to look at my mental health, maybe I need to look at how I'm taking care of myself, there's somebody out there that can work with that. Just reach out and get that help that you need. There's no shame in it. Just stay open-minded and just ask somebody for help, and it will come to you.
That's good stuff. All right. Well, Liberty Counselor, thank you so much. And anytime you want to come on and chat, you're more than welcome to.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, I always have a lot to say, so I am more than happy to be on your podcast whenever you want. And it was a really fun experience. Thank you for making it painless for me.
Hey, anytime. All right. Well, we'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks.
All right, there you have it. Thanks again to Liberty Counselor for coming on and hanging out, and hope that you end up moving out here. We certainly need more libertarians in the field out this way. But and for those of you in the audience, so something that we did after we stopped the recording, we hung out and chatted a little bit, and definitely I'll bring you back on in the future. Do not want you to think that any of the conversations that we had are to make you skeptical. If you felt called to come into the industry, if you have that calling, if you have that charge, you ain't going to get rid of it. You need to be in the trenches with us. You need to be out here helping people, help people recover, because we do need you. And for every bad thing that there is, there's also a positive thing to back it up, so there's a lot of hope to be found out here in this industry. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I thank you so much. I don't know. We're building a community here, guys, and it's beautiful. And I just love each and every one of y'all. And I hate to end it on a somber note. I really do. But I am behind the times a little bit, and you guys have heard me play this song in particular, and especially other songs by this person. But this is Jesse Stewart. He is a he's a folk punk artist. Had a lot of great music. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I found out that he actually passed away from a drug overdose back in November. Just was perusing around YouTube and saw something on it, and man, it just bums me out. So yeah, it's sad, right? Another one we lost to the battle, but the man's music is still good. It'll live on. I'm still gonna jam it. It will forever be on my playlist that I have. And so one more time, I'm gonna drop this song on you guys. This is Jesse Stewart, When I'm Gone. All right, love you guys. Have a great week.
Took everything I had just to roll out of bed. Had to get down to that corner, get the fuck out of my head. Gave her every coin I made, and she makes me wait. But tell me who, yeah, who, well, who's gonna rip me off? Who's gonna rip me off when you're gone? I was coming off the end of some awful sort of bender. I thought I might throw the last couple into the vegetable crisper, but I woke up to nothing but cans in my sink. But tell me who, yeah, who's gonna drink my morning booze? Who's gonna drink my booze when you're gone? I left them on the table, I swore I must have had about 7 or 8. Woke up nothing to a half, but staring me in my fucking face. Oh man, how could you do me like that? Tell me who, yeah, who's gonna smoke my smokes? Who's gonna smoke my smokes when you're gone? Well, I'm sitting in the park with my hobo dog. Well, she's off in the corner eating some other hobo's log. Ah, fuck. I gotta deal with this. But tell me who, yeah, who's gonna beat my dog? Who's gonna beat my dog when I'm gone? Still sitting in the same fucking park. Way the fuck past dark. Got a fist full of reasons why she should've came back, but you know she doesn't, cause she makes me wait. But tell me who, yeah, who's gonna beat my wife? Who's gonna beat my wife when I'm gone? So I'm sitting here, I'm feeling kind of shitty. I thought I might wander down to the inner east side of this godforsaken city. I picked up, I dropped off, weren't no ambulance for me. But tell me who, yeah, well, who's gonna smash the dope? Who's gonna smash the dope at my wake? Took everything I had to roll out of bed. Hit the end of that corner, man, get the fuck out of my head. I gave her every coin I made, and she makes me wait. Hope you guys like irony.